I woke up to the sound of distant beeping, sharp, rhythmic, too sterile to be real. My eyelids felt like bricks, my limbs even heavier. It was like waking up inside a dream. No beginning, no end, just confusion stitched together with pain. I tried to move, but every inch of my body protested. A white ceiling, fluorescent lights buzzing above, a faint scent of antiseptic, and then her. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling. "You're awake!" I blinked slowly. My throat was dry, sandpaper against every breath. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. But I saw her, Emily, sitting beside the hospital bed with her hands clenched together, face pale and eyes red from crying. "Where am I?" I croaked, the words tasting foreign. She leaned forward quickly, brushing hair from my forehead. "You were in a car accident. You've been unconscious for days. They said they didn't know if—" I winced, trying to sit up, but lightning shot down my spine. "Days!" "You're safe now," she whispered. "I'm here." But something felt wrong, like a puzzle piece missing in a picture you swore you had completed. I searched her face for comfort, but instead I found distance. Or maybe it was just the fog in my brain. I couldn't tell. A nurse walked in, cheerful and efficient. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Mr. Carter," she said, flipping through charts. "It's a miracle you survived. The car was totaled." "Do I hesitated, turning to Emily. "Remember the crash?" Her face stiffened just for a second. She exchanged a look with the nurse. "You suffered a head injury," the nurse explained. "There's some retrograde amnesia. It's normal after trauma. You might have trouble remembering things, recent events, people, even faces. But memories can return. Sometimes." I looked back at Emily. Her eyes darted away. "What do I not remember?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, then smiled, too quickly. "Nothing that matters now," she said. "Just focus on getting better." That was the first lie. I spent the next few days in a haze of medications, therapy, and fragmented memories that danced just outside my reach. I remembered my childhood, my parents, even my dog from 3rd grade. But when I tried to remember recent years, my job, my wedding, my marriage to Emily, there were blank pages, like someone had ripped them out. She never left my side. She brought me books, played my favorite music, fed me soup, smiled when I asked questions she didn't answer. At first I was grateful, then I was suspicious. Every time I asked about our life together, her answers were short, vague, scripted. "Where did we live before the accident?" I asked once. "Oh, you wouldn't remember," she said with a soft chuckle. "We moved a lot. Nothing special." "What was our wedding like?" Her eyes watered. "Small, intimate. You cried." She always said just enough to shut down the question, but never enough to build a picture. It didn't make sense. Then came the nightmares, flashes of fire, screams, a woman's voice yelling, not Emily's, a phone clutched in my hand, the sound of brakes screeching, then impact. I'd jolt awake, drenched in sweat, breathing hard. "It's just trauma," she'd whisper. "Your brain is confused." But it didn't feel confused. It felt silenced, like something was being buried deep on purpose. Sometimes I heard a voice in my dream say, "You weren't supposed to know." Know what? A week later I was discharged and returned home. But home was unfamiliar. The house was tastefully decorated but cold. There were no family pictures, just abstract art, no wedding photos, no laughter in the walls. The furniture looked new, unused. The guest room was pristine, too pristine. I wandered the rooms trying to feel something, anything. My study was locked. Emily said I never used it much. I didn't believe her. One evening, while she showered, I found a box under the guest bed. Inside were letters, photos, old receipts, and something that made my blood run cold. A keychain with the initials JL. "Who's JL?" I asked casually over dinner. She froze mid-bite. "What?" "Found a keychain in the guest room. Must have belonged to someone." She smiled tightly. "Oh, probably from before we moved in. This used to be a rental, remember? But I didn't. And I was starting to think she didn't want me to. One night, I dreamed again, this time clearer. I was in a car, driving fast, my hands shaking. The dashboard lit up. A message notification popped on the screen. "I'm sorry, you weren't supposed to find out like this. Jay." Then I saw her, Emily, crying on a staircase, someone else's shirt in her hand. A man's voice yelling behind a closed door. I woke up gasping, my heart racing. Emily wasn't beside me. I got up, heart pounding, and walked down the hallway. Her voice came from the kitchen. She was on the phone, whispering urgently, "I'm doing everything I can. He doesn't remember anything. I just need more time." The floor creaked under my foot. She turned, startled. "Can't sleep?" she asked, too quickly. "No," I said slowly. "Neither can you, apparently." The next morning, I demanded answers. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Who is Jay? What aren't you telling me?" She stared at me, face pale. "Daniel, you said you were my wife. You said we were happy. But every time I ask about our life, you lie." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "Because you knew I'd leave," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Even if I don't remember what you did. My body does. My heart does. I feel it." She sank into a chair, defeated. "You were going to leave me. You found out about the affair. The accident happened right after. I thought maybe this was a second chance." My world tilted. "I wanted to protect what we had," she whispered. "Protect what? The lie?" Silence fell between us like a knife. I turned and left the room, unsure if I'd ever come back. That night I stood by the window, staring at the world I no longer recognized. I didn't remember who I was. But I knew one thing. Someone took my life from me, and someone else tried to rewrite it, and I was going to find out the truth, even if it destroyed everything she tried to hide. I stood in the hospital hallway, gripping the flimsy cup of coffee like it could anchor me to reality. But nothing felt real anymore. The man lying in that bed, hooked up to tubes and machines, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, was my husband, and also a stranger. Nathan had survived the crash. Barely. The doctors said it was a miracle his body had pulled through. But the damage to his memory? That wasn't so easily repaired. He didn't recognize me. Not my face, not my voice, not the way I whispered his name through choked sobs. When I touched his hand, there was no spark of recognition, no flicker of connection, just polite confusion. And in that moment, standing at the edge of his sterile hospital bed, I realized something terrifying. He didn't remember anything, not our wedding, not the fights, not the betrayal. And maybe, just maybe, that was my second chance. When we brought Nathan home, it wasn't really home to him. The house looked unfamiliar to his eyes. The pictures on the walls were like props in someone else's life. Our dog Luna barked excitedly at his return, but he flinched and stepped back like she was a threat. "Nathan," I said gently, placing a hand on his arm, "she's your dog. You trained her yourself." He blinked at me slowly, then looked down at Luna with curiosity instead of affection. Did I? The silence that followed was deafening. He asked questions at first, basic ones, where we lived, what his job was, if we had kids, but never the hard ones, never about us. He didn't ask if we were happy. He didn't ask what our life had been like, and I didn't offer, because the truth was, we weren't happy. Not anymore. Not for a long time. Before the accident, our marriage had been unraveling, thread by thread. Long nights of silence, passive-aggressive dinners, cold shoulders, and something even worse brewing beneath the surface, something I thought I could bury forever. Now I was being handed the clean slate I never dared dream of. Nathan, in his amnesiac innocence, was trusting me, looking to me for guidance, for comfort, for the pieces of himself he couldn't retrieve. And I was lying to him every single day. I curated his life like a museum exhibit, I removed traces of the ugly parts, cleared old texts, hid the journal, replaced photos that might spark questions. I even stopped his sister, Rachel, from visiting. "She's too emotional," I told him. "It might overwhelm you." The truth? Rachel knew. She knew what I had done, and if she told him now, if she reminded him of who I really was, everything would collapse. So I distanced him from her. Instead, I painted a picture of our life that was sanitized, perfect, a husband and wife in love, waiting to rediscover each other like characters in a Nicholas Sparks novel. I cooked his favorite meals, which he didn't remember liking. I told him stories of vacations we never took. I smiled through the guilt, through the weight of the secret I was suffocating under. At first, it worked. Nathan began to smile again. He laughed awkwardly at times, but it was a start. He reached for my hand at dinner. He kissed my cheek goodnight, and every time he did, a dagger twisted deeper in my chest, because it was all built on a lie. One night I stood in the bathroom gripping the sink, staring at myself in the mirror. My reflection didn't look like a villain, but wasn't that the worst kind? The kind that wore a mask of love. I told myself I was protecting him, that knowing the truth now, while he was vulnerable, would only hurt him, that I was giving him peace, giving us a second chance. But deep down, I knew better. I wasn't protecting him. I was protecting myself, because if Nathan remembered what I did, if he remembered the betrayal, I would lose him. Again. One afternoon, he found an old notebook in the closet. "What's this?" he asked, flipping through the pages. Panic surged in my veins. That notebook had scraps of my therapy journaling, rambling confessions, raw, ugly truths I thought I'd hidden. "Oh, just something from when I was working through some stress," I said too quickly, yanking it from his hands. He tilted his head. "You seem nervous." "I'm just tired. It's been a lot." He studied me with eyes that were both familiar and foreign. "I get the feeling there's a lot you're not telling me." I forced a laugh. "You're still recovering, Nathan. It's better to focus on moving forward." But the way he looked at me, it lingered, like a seed of suspicion had been planted. That night, he didn't kiss me goodnight. The cracks were forming again, but this time they weren't coming from him. They were splintering from me, from the lie I was living, from the truth I was burying, from the fear that maybe he was starting to remember. It started with a smell. Nathan was walking through the garden behind our house, where the roses had just begun to bloom. I watched him from the kitchen window, thinking how much he looked like the man I used to love, even if he didn't remember her, or me. Then he stopped by the lilac bush. His fingers brushed the petals, and he froze. He stood there for almost a full minute. When he came inside, his face was pale. "Why do I know that scent?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. "It hit me so hard. I felt..." He struggled for words. "Something, like a memory that slipped before I could grab it." I forced a smile. "Lilacs were your favorite. You planted that bush yourself." He looked down at his hands. "That explains the feeling, I guess." But I could see it in his eyes. It didn't explain it at all. Something had been triggered, a fracture in the amnesia, a whisper from the past. After that day, Nathan became different, restless, curious. He started digging into boxes in the attic, asking questions I didn't have rehearsed answers for. "Who was Kyle?" he asked one evening, holding up an old photo strip from a wedding. "You mentioned him once, but I can't remember. I nearly dropped the plate I was washing." Kyle. The name was a blade pressed against my ribs. Kyle had been the mistake, the betrayal, the thing I had buried so deep I thought time would erase it. I kept my back turned to Nathan. He was just a friend from college. We lost touch. A lie. He was more than a friend. He had been the reason I nearly left my marriage 2 years ago. Nathan didn't say anything for a moment, then quietly, "Why is he in so many of our pictures?" I turned slowly. "What?" He walked to the table and placed several photos down. In each one, Kyle's face appeared beside mine, smiling, close, too close. I swallowed. We used to hang out a lot. It was a group of us. Nathan nodded slowly. You look different with him. Different how? Lighter. My throat tightened. I grabbed the photos and stuffed them back into the envelope. It doesn't matter. That was a long time ago. But it did matter. It mattered more than anything, because I hadn't told him the whole truth. I hadn't told him that Kyle and I had reconnected while Nathan was working long hours, drowning in his own exhaustion and distance. I hadn't told him about the night it crossed the line, about the kiss, about the hotel, about the moment I betrayed every vow I had ever made. He never found out, or maybe he had, and the accident wiped it away. That night, I had a dream. Nathan was standing in our bedroom, holding a suitcase. He wasn't angry, just tired. I remember everything he said. You lied to me, even now. I woke up in a sweat, breathless, alone, except I wasn't. Nathan was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Couldn't sleep, I asked. He shook his head. I keep having flashes, nothing clear, just feelings. And your name, your voice, sometimes it sounds different. Different how? He turned to me, like you're apologizing every time you say it. My chest clenched. The guilt had seeped into every word I spoke. He could feel it, even if he didn't understand it yet. Later that week, while I was out shopping, he found my journal, the one I thought I had hidden well. When I returned, he was sitting at the kitchen table, the open notebook in front of him. You said we were happy, he said without looking up. My heart dropped. Nathan. He turned a page. You said you never lied to me. I was trying to protect you. He looked up, his face was unreadable. From the truth? The silence between us was a storm. And in that storm, I realized the past wasn't just whispering, it was screaming. The worst part wasn't that Daniel didn't remember me. It was the way he looked at me, like I was just another face in a sea of unfamiliar people. No flicker of recognition, no spark, just distant politeness, as if I were the nurse dropping off his meal tray. I had prepared myself for this. Doctors warned us memory loss could be severe after the trauma. But nothing could have prepared me for the aching silence when I first walked into his hospital room and said his name. Daniel, I whispered, tears already blurring my vision. His head tilted slightly, his brows knit in confusion. I'm sorry. Do I know you? I smiled through the sting in my chest. I'm Evelyn, your wife. His face didn't change, not even a twitch. I have a wife, he said, looking down at his hands as if he might find the answer etched into his palms. That moment shattered something inside me. I spent the next days trying to rebuild what we had. I brought in photo albums, videos from our wedding, the playlist we danced to on our honeymoon. I repeated stories he used to tell me about the beach proposal, the night we stayed up until dawn during a power outage, the silly nickname he had for my cat. He listened, he tried, but every response felt mechanical, hollow, like he was playing along for my sake, not because any part of him felt it. And worse, he started pulling away. He became closer with her. Her name was Lydia. She claimed to be a friend, a colleague, who had been there for him while I was busy working during his recovery. But something about her didn't sit right with me. The way she lingered by his bed, the way her hand casually brushed his shoulder when she spoke, the way his eyes softened only when she entered the room. I watched them laugh over inside jokes I didn't know. I saw him smile at her with warmth he never showed me anymore. It was like watching my husband fall in love again. Only this time, it wasn't with me. One afternoon, I arrived early. Daniel and Lydia hadn't noticed me yet. She was seated at the edge of his bed, holding his hand. Their heads were close, too close. He said softly, "I feel like I know you more than anyone." And she responded with a half whisper, "That's because I never lied to you." My heart plummeted. What lie? She caught sight of me and stood abruptly, adjusting her blouse. "Evelyn, didn't see you there." I walked in, controlled and calm on the outside. "I came to drop off more photos," I said, but my voice cracked. Daniel looked at me then, not with affection or guilt, but with confusion, as if I was the stranger walking into his space. That night, I sat in my car for over an hour, replaying that phrase over and over. "That's because I never lied to you." The next day, I confronted her. Alone in the hospital cafeteria, I stopped her with a cold, steady tone. "I heard what you said yesterday, about lying. What did you mean?" Lydia smiled, a slow, calculated smirk that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, Evelyn," she said, "you always thought you had him wrapped around your finger. But Daniel and we had something before the accident. He was going to leave you. He just didn't get the chance." My breath caught. My hands trembled. "You're lying." She leaned in, her voice sharp as glass. "Am I? Or are you the lie he's trying to forget?" I didn't sleep that night. I sat by Daniel's bedside in the dark while he slept, watching his face twitch with dreams I wasn't part of. I whispered our memories, hoping something would reach him, but it felt like I was speaking into a void. I wanted to scream, to shake him and force him to remember me, but that wasn't love, that was desperation. And yet, I couldn't let go. The final blow came days later. The doctors announced he was being discharged early against their advice. Lydia had arranged everything. Daniel had chosen to live with her during his continued recovery. I stood there, holding the overnight bag I had packed with care, watching them walk out of the hospital together. He didn't even look back. He had left me behind, erased me, without even knowing what he was doing. But Lydia knew. She knew everything. And now I knew she was hiding something, because just before they exited, I saw her drop something from her purse, a flash drive. I picked it up after they left, and when I plugged it into my laptop that night, what I saw changed everything. The moment I slid the flash drive into my laptop, my hands were shaking. I didn't know what I expected, maybe documents, photos, or medical files. But a part of me hoped it would be something ordinary. Something innocent. Something that would prove Lydia was just an overbearing friend, nothing more. But what I found was far from innocent. Inside the drive was a folder titled D&M. At first, I didn't register what that meant. But when I opened it and saw the first video file named Our Secret 01 Move, a cold realization spread through me like ice in my veins. D&M, Daniel and Lydia. I clicked on the first file. It was grainy footage, clearly filmed in secret. The camera must have been set on a nightstand or a shelf. It showed a hotel room. Daniel sat on the bed. Lydia joined him seconds later, laughing as she kicked off her heels. And then I heard it, his voice, soft, familiar. "I can't keep doing this, Lydia. I'm married." She replied instantly, "But not happy. You said that." "I know, but Evelyn doesn't deserve this." My breath caught. I hit pause. The frozen image of them together stared back at me. There were 5 more videos. I couldn't bring myself to watch them all. I didn't need to. I had enough. The timestamps dated back 6 months before the accident. 6 months of betrayal. 6 months where Daniel was living a double life, torn between me and her. And now she had used his amnesia to rewrite everything. She didn't just help him recover. She stepped into a void and filled it with lies. I sat in the dark for hours, shaking. I thought I had lost Daniel to the accident, but the truth was far worse. I had lost him long before the crash. He had already chosen her, and now he didn't even remember choosing at all. But what Lydia didn't know was that she had just handed me the one thing I needed: evidence. She was so sure of her manipulation that she never thought twice about what she dropped. But that flash drive was my key to everything. The next morning, I made a decision. I got dressed, printed stills from the videos, wrote out a timeline, and packed the flash drive into a small envelope. I wasn't going to storm into Lydia's house screaming. No, that's what she expected. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with Daniel's doctor. Dr. Ramirez was hesitant at first. "I understand you're upset," she said, her voice careful. "But his recovery depends on stability, Evelyn. Forcing him to face shocking revelations might—" I slid the flash drive across the desk. "Watch the first video, then tell me if he's really in a safe environment." An hour later, she called me back into her office, her face pale. "He deserves to know," she admitted. "And Lydia has been violating multiple boundaries." That was the beginning. We staged the intervention. It took coordination and care. Dr. Ramirez arranged for Daniel to come in under the pretense of a routine checkup. She would be there. I would be there. And most importantly, so would a memory specialist trained in trauma-informed reintegration therapy. When Daniel entered the room, he looked surprised to see me. Not angry, just blank. That emptiness in his eyes was a wound that never stopped hurting. "Daniel," I said gently, "we need to show you something." We played the first 60 seconds of the video. His reaction was visceral. He sat forward slowly, stared at the screen, then turned away like it burned his eyes. That's me," he whispered, "but I don't remember any of this." Dr. Ramirez leaned in. "That's because the part of your memory that includes these events hasn't returned. But it happened, it's real, and it explains a lot about what's been influencing your current perception of reality." Daniel looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in weeks. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Because someone didn't want you to know." We confronted Lydia that same afternoon. She was furious when she arrived, clearly unaware we had exposed her secret. But when Dr. Ramirez presented the evidence and the board's recommendation that she be barred from visiting Daniel during recovery, her face cracked. "You can't do this," she screamed. "He loves me. He chose me." Daniel stood up. "I don't even know who you are," he said, voice low. "You filled my head with lies while I was trying to heal. That's not love." She turned to me, venom in her voice. "You think this means you've won?" I met her glare head on. "I don't care about winning. I care about the truth." Security escorted her out. The damage was done. Daniel still couldn't remember everything, but with Lydia gone, the fog began to lift. We spent days together, quiet walks, small conversations, revisiting old places. Sometimes it brought fragments of memory back. Sometimes it didn't. But it wasn't about forcing him to remember. It was about helping him feel safe enough to want to. And slowly, I saw flickers of him return. A smile he used to give me, the way he'd nudge me when I rambled. His favorite snack, salted almonds, he randomly requested one afternoon, even though he claimed to hate them just a week earlier. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. Then one night, we sat on the porch, the sun dipping low behind the trees. He looked at me and said quietly, "Do you think I loved her more than you?" The question hit like a punch to the chest, but I answered honestly. "I think you were lost, and she gave you something that felt like clarity, but it wasn't real, because if it was, you wouldn't have forgotten her so easily." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "But I keep remembering you." Tears welled in my eyes. Maybe we couldn't go back, but we could go forward, together. It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation with Lydia, since the flash drive, since the lies were peeled back, one by one, like layers of rotting wallpaper revealing the cracks in the foundation underneath. Daniel was different now. not fully himself, at least not the Daniel I married, but something inside him had shifted. The tension in his shoulders had eased. He laughed more, even if it was faint. He asked questions, real ones. And most of all, he looked at me again, without the vacant fog of manipulation clouding his eyes. But nothing could have prepared me for what he said over breakfast one rainy Saturday. He stirred his coffee absently, eyes down, then looked up and asked, "Do we have a wedding album?" My heart skipped. I nodded, trying to sound calm. "Yeah, it's in the bedroom closet, top shelf." He paused. "Can I see it?" I wanted to say no. I needed to say no. Not because I didn't want him to see it, but because I wasn't ready to watch what it might do to him. What if it overwhelmed him? What if it triggered something too soon? But I swallowed my fear and stood. Of course. I pulled the box from the shelf with shaking hands. Dust coated the top. I hadn't touched it in over a year. We sat on the couch together, the storm whispering against the windows, and I opened it. The first page held a single photo. Us, laughing under a canopy of string lights. My veil tangled in his hair. He was kissing my cheek while I was mid-laugh, completely unposed. He stared at it for a long time. His thumb brushed the edge of the photo like he was trying to feel the memory. "God," he whispered, "I look so in love." "You were," I said quietly. Page after page we flipped. Some made him smile. Some made him tilt his head and frown, like trying to decipher a code written by someone else. But it wasn't until we reached the back, the final page, that everything shifted. It was a photo of our first dance. The photographer had caught a candid moment, his forehead pressed to mine, eyes closed, our hands clasped between us like a prayer. Daniel stared at it and didn't move. "Daniel?" I asked gently. Stillness. And then his whole body stiffened. He gasped. Not a small one, a violent, involuntary intake of breath like someone breaking the surface of deep water. He clutched his temples. I remember this," he whispered, voice cracking. "This song, this moment, Evelyn, I remember." My heart was pounding. "What do you remember?" His eyes flooded with tears. "Everything. The way you smelled. The way the floor creaked under our feet. You were crying. I kissed your nose. I said," he choked, "I said, if this is a dream, I never want to wake up." I started crying too. "That's exactly what you said." He collapsed into my arms, sobbing, shaking, laughing and crying all at once. "It's coming back," he whispered. "It's all coming back." I held him, rocked him, kissed the top of his head like I used to. I didn't know whether to scream or fall apart, because this meant hope, real, undeniable hope, but also a storm. Because if this memory had returned, the good one, then the others would follow. And I didn't know if we were ready for the ones we weren't in together. The next day he asked about the year before the accident. "Was I different?" he asked. "Did you notice me changing?" I hesitated. "Yes, a little, but I thought it was stress. Work. You pulled away, but I never imagined." I couldn't finish. I didn't need to. He nodded. "I remember Lydia's name, but not her face, not what we did. That part's still gone." "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to rush it." But inside I was terrified. What if he remembered and blamed me? What if the version of himself that cheated came back and stayed? That night, he couldn't sleep. I found him in the living room around 2 a.m., staring at his own reflection in the darkened TV screen. He looked haunted. "Do you ever think I was a bad man?" he asked without looking at me. The question stunned me, but I sat beside him and answered honestly. "I think you were a broken man, and I think Lydia took advantage of that. But I still let it happen." "Yes," I said, voice cracking, "but you're here, and you're trying, and that counts." He turned to me slowly. "What if I remember everything, and I hate myself?" I took his hand. "Then I'll remind you how to love yourself again. A few days later, it happened. He was reorganizing the desk drawers, trying to rebuild some sense of normal. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a pen dropping, then silence. When I walked into the room, he was holding a necklace, one I hadn't seen in years. I knew what it was instantly, a cheap gold chain with a tiny charm, an L. He turned to me, expression blank. "This isn't yours," he said. I shook my head. "I remember giving it to her," he said softly, "the day we went to the cabin. I told you I was on a business trip." My heart clenched. He looked up at me. "I betrayed you." And there it was. The memory, the moment, the full truth returned. "I betrayed you," he repeated, "and I don't know how to come back from that." I knelt beside him. "You already have," I said, "because now you see it, and the man I married, the real you, would never do it again." "But how can you trust me?" "I don't yet," I admitted, "but I want to, and I think that matters." He wrapped his arms around me, forehead pressed to mine again, just like in the photo. That night he whispered as we lay in bed, "If you ever want to leave, I won't stop you." I turned to him. "If I wanted to leave, I would have left when you forgot who I was." He didn't answer, but I felt his tears on my shoulder. It started with a forgotten jacket. Daniel had been cleaning out the closet in the guest room, something he rarely touched, especially since the accident. He said it made him feel like he was discovering pieces of a stranger's life. I understood. The man he used to be was still half a ghost, haunting corners of our home, embedded in old receipts, dusty books, and tucked away clothes he didn't remember buying. I was in the kitchen when I heard his voice. "Evelyn?" Something in his tone made me drop the dish towel and hurry in. He was holding a folded envelope. "I found this in the inside pocket," he said, staring at it like it might bite. "It has your name on it." My breath caught. I took the envelope carefully. The handwriting was his, definitely his, slanted and sharp, the way it used to be before the tremors in his hand post-accident softened it. My name was written in ink that had faded just slightly with time. Evelyn, no date, no return address, just Evelyn. "You want to read it?" I asked, my throat tightening. He nodded. "I think I need to." So we sat down together on the edge of the bed. I unfolded the letter with trembling fingers, and I began to read. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, I guess I didn't have the courage to say it to your face, and for that, I'm sorry. I don't know where to begin, or maybe I do, and I just don't want to. I've made a mistake, a big one. The kind that doesn't just break promises, it breaks people. It wasn't supposed to happen. That night at the retreat, Lydia was just someone I confided in. I told her things I should have told you. I was weak, lonely, tired of pretending I was okay. And then, it happened. Once, that's all it was. But once was enough to change everything. I paused, my vision blurred with tears. Daniel hadn't moved. His eyes were locked on the paper, his lips parted slightly, as if trying to inhale the truth with every breath. "Keep going," he whispered. So I did. I wanted to tell you the moment I got back, but then I saw you waiting at the airport, smiling, holding that ridiculous welcome home sign, and I couldn't. I told myself I'd fix it, that I'd prove to you I was the man you thought I was, but I couldn't shake it. The guilt, the way Lydia looked at me like she owned a secret piece of me now, and you were so good to me. It made everything worse. I kept thinking I'd come clean. But every day that passed, the weight grew heavier, and the coward in me got louder. He closed his eyes as I read. I could see his jaw tightening, tears gathering in the corners again, but he didn't stop me. He needed this. We needed this. "I don't know what you'll do when you find out. Maybe you'll leave. Maybe you'll scream. You have every right. But before you do, please believe this. I love you. I never stopped. I messed up. But it wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I was scared. Not of losing you, but of not deserving you. I still don't. Daniel's silence fell. The kind of silence that sits heavy, like fog that refuses to lift. I lowered the letter and looked at him. He was crying, not a single tear or two, but full, wrecked sobs, the kind that come from deep inside, from years of regret buried too long. "I wrote that?" he asked, voice broken. I nodded. "You did? And I never gave it to you?" "No." He put his head in his hands. "I meant every word." I placed the letter on the bed and knelt in front of him. "You wrote it before the crash," I said gently, "but maybe you weren't ready then. And now," I looked into his eyes, "now you are." Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the house had gone still, we sat on the porch. The stars were unusually clear. He reached for my hand. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he said, "but I want to spend the rest of my life earning it." I squeezed his fingers. "Start by forgiving yourself," I whispered. He didn't answer, but he nodded, and for the first time in a long time, I believed him. The letter became a turning point, not just for him, but for us, because that confession, written 2 decades ago, had finally been spoken aloud, and with it came clarity that our marriage wasn't built on perfection, it was built on choice. The choice to stay, to heal, to try again, even after everything. But just when I thought the past was fully behind us, something else surfaced. Not a letter, not a memory, but a video. One I didn't know existed. And what I saw on it changed everything. 2 days after we read the letter, Daniel and I began sorting through old boxes in the attic. We were on a quiet mission of rediscovery. Every photo, every dusty keepsake, every torn envelope felt like a puzzle piece in the reconstruction of a life he was only just beginning to remember. At first, it was ordinary. High school yearbooks, wedding decorations, baby clothes. And then I found the camcorder. It was buried in a shoebox labeled 2002 Anniversary Trip. Daniel furrowed his brow. "I remember that trip. Sort of. You surprised me with a cabin in the mountains," I reminded him. "We spent a weekend snowed in. Just us." He smiled softly. "That sounds like something I'd do." I handed him the camera. "Let's see what memories we've got." We hooked it up to the old TV in the bedroom. Most of the footage was sweet. Shots of us clumsily dancing in the tiny living room, playing cards, laughing over burned marshmallows. And then a different clip began to play. There was no snow in this video, no mountains, just a dimly lit hotel room. Daniel was alone, sitting on the edge of a bed, clearly unaware the camera was still recording. He looked younger. Tired, disheveled. The timestamp blinked, February 13th, 2002, 2 weeks after our trip. He rubbed his face, exhaled hard, and spoke. "I can't do this," he said to the empty room. "I thought if I just came clean it would fix things. But even writing that letter, it didn't feel like enough. I keep thinking about Evelyn, about the look on her face if she ever finds out. And Lydia, God, what a mistake. She wants more. She thinks we had something real. But I love Evelyn. I love her. I got lost for a minute, and now I don't know how to find my way back." My heart stopped. Daniel's eyes were glued to the screen. He looked stunned, hollow. I hit pause. He whispered, "I don't remember saying any of that." "It's okay," I said softly. "That's why we're watching, so we can remember." I pressed play again. "I'm going to delete this. I have to. She can't know. Not now. Not like this. If she ever saw this, it would destroy everything." He stood up, walked toward the camera. Then the screen went black. Silence filled the room. Not a silence of peace, but one of reckoning. Daniel leaned back against the pillows, his eyes distant. "I wanted to tell you," he said after a long moment. "Even back then." "You tried," I replied. "You wrote the letter. You filmed this. But I didn't follow through. I buried it. I buried you in a lie. I took his hand. No, I said. You buried yourself. And now you're finally digging free. He blinked like he was trying to focus through the fog of his own past. I still don't understand why I filmed that. Because part of you needed the truth to exist somewhere, I whispered, even if it took 20 years to find. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about how many versions of Daniel I had lived with over the years, the man I fell in love with, the man who betrayed me, the man who forgot, and now the man trying desperately to atone. But there was one version I hadn't faced yet, the one who made Lydia believe it was more than a mistake. I needed to hear her side, not to punish Daniel, but to finally close the circle. The night after meeting Lydia, I sat in the living room for hours, the video camera resting in my lap. Daniel had gone to bed early. His energy had been low ever since watching that footage. He hadn't spoken much. Just a quiet kiss on my forehead and a whispered, "Thank you for staying." I stared at the blank TV screen, the silent camera, and realized we had uncovered nearly every secret. His secrets, but there was still mine. It wasn't something I had buried deliberately, not at first, but once I'd made the decision to keep it quiet, the silence became a part of me. It became easier, safer. After all, what good would it have done back then? He was already drifting from me, already hiding things, so I convinced myself it was for the best. But now, after everything, after letters, lies, lost time, and Lydia, he deserved the truth, even if it shattered what we were slowly rebuilding. The next morning I found him outside, sipping tea on the back porch. He looked tired, but present, awake in a way he hadn't been in weeks. "I remember this view," he said, glancing at the morning fog hovering over the garden. "You used to plant tulips here." "I still do," I replied. "You just haven't seen them bloom yet." He smiled faintly. I sat beside him. "There's something I need to tell you," I said. The smile faded, his body tensed, but he didn't interrupt. He waited, so I told him. "It was 20 years ago," I began, "just after I found out about you and Lydia. I hadn't said anything yet. You didn't know I knew, but I did." He inhaled slowly, braced himself. "I was going to leave you," I continued. "I'd packed a bag. I had even looked up divorce lawyers." He didn't speak. But then I found out I was pregnant. His head jerked slightly, like he'd been slapped by a ghost. "Wait," he said, hoarse. "We didn't have any kids then." I nodded. "I lost it. At 8 weeks." Daniel looked down at his hands, trembling. "You never told me." "No." "Why?" "Because I was angry. Because I was hurt. Because I didn't want you to think a baby was the reason I stayed." I paused. "But more than that, I didn't want you to stay out of guilt." He stood, walked a few paces away, and gripped the porch railing like he might fall. "So all that time," he whispered, "I thought I'd ruined your trust, but I didn't know that we had something else too." "We did." He turned back to me, tears in his eyes. "Was it a boy or a girl?" "I never knew." He sat back down, his entire frame collapsing inward. "I keep thinking there can't be any more surprises," he said, "that the worst of it is behind us. But every time we peel back a layer, there's more." I reached for his hand. "I didn't tell you to hurt you, or to punish you. I told you because if we're going to rebuild this, I can't hold anything back. Not anymore." He nodded. "I'm glad you told me," he said, "even if it breaks me." "No," I said, "this won't break us. It'll free us." Later that afternoon, we went to the park. Not to talk, just to exist in the same space again, to breathe together without old shadows strangling the air between us. As we sat on a bench near the pond, Daniel turned to me. "I don't remember what I felt like when you told me you were pregnant," he said quietly. "You never had the chance." "Right. But now I wish I had." A pause. Would you have told me if I hadn't lost my memory? That question sat in the silence like a loaded weapon. No, I admitted, probably not. He nodded. That's fair. That night, I opened the last box in the attic. Inside were old journals of mine from the early 2000s. I flipped through them and found an entry from the day I lost the pregnancy. I don't think I can tell him, not now, not when I'm still bleeding, not just physically, but inside. How can I grieve with someone who's already betrayed me? Maybe this is a sign that I'm meant to walk away quietly, that some truths are too heavy to share. Reading that again made something shift in me. I wasn't that woman anymore. I had chosen silence out of survival, but now I was choosing truth out of strength. Daniel and I didn't talk much for the next 2 days, but something changed between us. There was no more pretending, no more roles. We weren't husband and wife, or betrayer and betrayed. We were two broken people holding the pieces out in the open, and finally, we were choosing to put them back together, as equals. But the past wasn't quite done with us, because as I was packing up the last of the attic boxes, I found something wedged behind the insulation, a tiny black cassette tape, no label, no markings. I almost dismissed it, until I recognized the handwriting on the case. For her, only if she asks. It was Daniel's, and it was dated March 2005, 3 years after everything, 3 years after the affair, after the miscarriage, after we tried to move on. I walked down the stairs, holding the tape like it was radioactive. "Daniel?" I called. He looked up from the kitchen. I held up the cassette. "I think you owe me one more truth." He blinked. "I've never seen that. Your handwriting says otherwise." We found an old recorder in a drawer, popped in the tape, pressed play, and what we heard would change everything again. The tape clicked softly as it began to play. There was a low hum at first, like the sound of old air, and then Daniel's voice, younger, shakier, more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it before. "If you're listening to this, it means I couldn't say it to your face." He paused, breathing audible. "I don't know if we're still together. I don't even know if you'll ever find this, but I recorded it anyway because I needed you to hear it, not anyone else, just you." I looked over at Daniel, the present Daniel. His eyes were wide, blank, with disbelief. "I don't remember making this," he whispered. I pressed pause. "Do you want to keep going?" He nodded. "I have to. There's so much I never said," the tape continued. "Like how I hated myself after the affair, every single day. You didn't even yell at me, that was the worst part. You just looked at me like I wasn't the man you married anymore, and you were right, I wasn't. But the thing I never told you, the part that made me sick for years, was that it wasn't just one night, not at first. It was months." My heart clenched. I hadn't known that. I had suspected, but hearing him say it like this was something else. "She told me she loved me. I told her I didn't love her back, and I meant it, but the damage was already done. You got pregnant around the time I ended things with Lydia. That's why I never found out. You didn't tell me, and I understand why." Daniel beside me ran a hand down his face, trembling. I didn't know I had remembered that. How the hell did I record this? I kept telling myself I could fix things, that if I just kept being a good husband from that point forward, maybe it would erase what I did. But every time I saw you smile, every time you touched my hand and said, "I forgive you," without ever actually saying it, I knew you were breaking in silence. So I started writing letters. I never mailed them. They're in the attic. Maybe you found them already. I had. Some, but not all. There's one more thing, something I've never told a soul, not even Lydia. Daniel's voice on the tape wavered. "Before I married you, I was engaged to someone else. Her name was Marissa." I froze. "What?" She left me 2 months before the wedding, said I was too cold, too detached, that I didn't know how to love properly. I think she was right. So when I met you, when you smiled at me like I was worthy, I clung to you like a lifeline. I told myself I'd never mess it up, and then I did. And now, if you've found this tape and you still love me somehow, I hope you know I never stopped loving you, even when I didn't deserve to. Silence, then click. We sat there, quiet, no music, no wind, just truth, raw, unearthed, and inescapable. Daniel's voice, older now, right beside me, broke the silence. I don't remember her, Marissa. That name, it means nothing to me. But she meant something, I said. She changed you. I guess she did. He looked at me. I meant what I said on that tape. I didn't deserve you, but I never stopped loving you. That was the final piece, not the affair, not the memory loss, not even the child we lost. But this moment of seeing the full picture, of finally knowing the entire man I'd married, this was the end of the road and the beginning of something new. Weeks passed. We started therapy, together and individually. We talked more than we ever had in the last 2 decades combined. Sometimes it hurt. Sometimes it healed. Often it did both, but we kept going. Because for the first time we were rebuilding something real. Not a performance, not a survival routine, but love, scarred, imperfect, but true. One morning, as I was cleaning the attic for good this time, I found one final letter in a shoebox, tucked behind the insulation. It was addressed to me, no date. Just 2 words on the front, if I forget. Inside, in Daniel's handwriting, if I ever lose my memory, remind me of who I was. But more importantly, remind me of who you are. Because if I forget everything else, I hope I never forget that loving you was the best thing I ever did. I brought the letter down, tears in my eyes. He was sitting on the couch, reading. I handed it to him. He read it in silence, then looked at me and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up. We're not perfect, we never will be. But now when people ask what saved our marriage, not the affair, not the lies, not even the memory loss, I say this: truth, all of it. No matter how late it comes, truth is what gave us a second chance. Some scars stay, but so do some promises." Months later, we renewed our vows. Not in a church, not in front of anyone, just the 2 of us, a bench, a garden full of tulips in bloom. He wrote his own this time, so did I. And as we stood there, hands trembling, hearts steady, I realized forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to love, even with the scars. And some scars, they shine brighter than gold.